It started with a letter, and ended with the unimaginable. The HOA didn't just fine me or threaten a lien. They took my children. Yes, you heard that right. They kidnapped my kids. According to them, I had violated their so-called sacred community rules by illegally purchasing a home in a 55-plus neighborhood. But here's the kicker, I didn't. My attorney had verified that my property sat outside their jurisdiction. The HOA just didn't know who they were dealing with. I'm not just any homeowner, I'm a federal judge. And they just made the biggest legal mistake of their lives. What would you do if the HOA came for your family? Welcome to my channel, where HOA revenge stories get real. Hit that subscribe button, because this one's about to explode. That morning had started like any other. Coffee brewed in the kitchen, the smell of toast filled the air, and my kids, Alex and Sophie, chatted excitedly about their upcoming soccer tournament. I was sipping my coffee, reviewing case notes for an upcoming session in federal court, when I heard a soft rustle, paper sliding through the front door mail slot. Another HOA notice, I thought, already annoyed. Probably a complaint about mailbox colors or my lawn not being uniform enough. But as I unfolded the letter, my breath caught. Final warning, you are in violation of HOA residency requirements. Immediate eviction required. All unauthorized minors must be removed from the premises within 24 hours. Failure to comply will result in further action. My pulse began to quicken. Unauthorized minors. My property wasn't even in their community. I had county zoning maps proving it. This was absurd. Furious, I grabbed my phone and called my attorney. "Elliot, we have a problem," I said the second he answered. "They're threatening to evict my kids." He sighed. "They can't. We handled this. Your property isn't under their authority. It's just a scare tactic. I'll send a cease and desist today." It should have ended there. Just another petty overreach. But what happened next, no one could have seen coming. The following day, I pulled into the driveway expecting laughter, the sound of video games or dishes clinking, normal after-school noise. But instead, I was greeted by an eerie silence. No Alex. No Sophie. I stepped inside and knew something was wrong. Their backpacks were untouched by the door. Shoes neatly lined up. It was like they had vanished right after I left. My stomach dropped. I called Alex. Straight to voicemail. Sophie, same thing. My heart thudded. I tried calling their friends' parents, none had seen them. Hands trembling, I called 911. "Sir, are you reporting a missing persons case?" the dispatcher asked calmly. "Yes. My children, they're gone." The next hours blurred, police, questions, searching the house. Did I have enemies? As a federal judge, yes. But none had ever dared come near my family. That's when one of the officers outside spoke. "Sir, we found this taped to your door." It was another letter from the HOA. My blood ran cold. "As your unauthorized tenants have failed to vacate, the HOA has taken steps to ensure compliance. Your children will be held in a safe location until the matter is resolved." My hands shook. I'd ruled over human traffickers and corrupt officials, but never, in my wildest nightmares, did I think an HOA would cross this line. "Did your HOA just admit to taking your kids?" an officer asked, horrified. I nodded, rage boiling beneath the surface. "Yes. And they have no idea what they've just started." The search began immediately. Officers fanned out across the neighborhood, questioning every HOA board member. But suddenly, no one knew anything. That's when Miss Harper, my sweet elderly neighbor who always baked cookies for my kids, pulled me aside. "Judge, I saw something strange this morning," she whispered. "Two men in suits. Never seen them before. They came after you left. Your kids got into a black SUV. They didn't look scared, but they didn't look happy either. My heart thumped. Where did they go? I asked. Toward the HOA clubhouse, she murmured. That was all I needed. We're going there. Now. The police followed me as I marched through the HOA's grand doors. Karen Wills, the so-called president of this power-drunk council, sat at a desk like she was queen of the neighborhood. Ah, Judge Carter, she purred smugly. I was expecting you. I slammed the letter on her desk. Where are my children? Her smile widened. Your illegal tenants have been relocated until we can resolve this. My jaw clenched. That's kidnapping. She waved a hand. They're at a board-approved guardianship facility. I glared at her. Where are they? Karen smirked. Somewhere safe. Now, stop making a scene. The HOA has rules. That's when I snapped. You think this is about rules? I turned to the officers. You heard her. She just admitted to detaining minors without consent. The lead officer stiffened. Mrs. Wills, if you don't disclose their location, you're under arrest for unlawful detainment and conspiracy. Her mask cracked. Wait, she stammered as they cuffed her. They're at Lakewood Christian Academy. I didn't wait. I ran. Even with my heart in my throat, I didn't slow down, not when the officers charged past me, not even as the school's glass doors flew open. To the outside world, everything looked normal. Kids ran around on the playground, parents laughed in the pickup line, but I knew better. Somewhere inside that building, my children were being held against their will, tucked away under the HOA's twisted idea of compliance. My mind raced through worst-case legal scenarios. What were they telling the school? What ridiculous authority were they pretending to have? None of it mattered. This was kidnapping. This was a crime. And every person who touched this scheme was about to go down with it. A flustered man in his 60s, the school principal, met us at the front office as officers pushed through the entrance. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, clearly overwhelmed by the sudden presence of law enforcement. The lead officer held up the damning HOA letter like it was radioactive. Sir, do you currently have 2 children enrolled here under the custody of the Willow Creek HOA? The principal blinked, visibly confused. Oh, yes. But where are they? I cut in, my voice cold and steady. He hesitated, then motioned toward a back hallway. Room 214. I didn't wait. My feet hit the tile like gunshots. Room 214. Room 214. The words echoed through my mind as I ran, heart pounding in my ears. When I reached the door, I didn't hesitate. I gripped the handle and flung it open so hard it cracked against the wall. And there they were. My babies. Alex and Sophie, sitting at small desks, wide-eyed and terrified, but safe. A woman in a stiff navy blue pantsuit stood beside them. Her eyes went wide when she saw me burst through the door. Who the hell are you? She snapped, stepping protectively in front of them. I didn't answer. I pushed past her and dropped to my knees, wrapping both kids into the tightest hug of my life. Dad! Sophie burst into tears, burying her face in my chest. We didn't know what was happening, they just took us. It's okay, baby, I whispered, my voice cracking. You're safe now. Alex clung to me, shaking, silent but gripping me like he'd never let go. I'd walked into federal courtrooms with cartel leaders staring me down and never felt fear, but this? This moment? It made everything else pale in comparison. The woman in the suit cleared her throat like she still had some kind of authority left. Mr. Carter, she said, voice tight. You have no right to be here. These children were placed under temporary HOA guardianship. My head turned slowly toward her. Shut up. The venom in my voice dropped the room into dead silence. Officers rushed in behind me. One stepped forward. "Ma'am, please step away from the children." She crossed her arms. "I don't think you understand, the HOA has legal grounds, you are not the government," I snapped. "You are not law enforcement. You are not a court. You have zero jurisdiction to detain anyone, let alone children." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. "Arrest her." The lead officer didn't hesitate. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for unlawful detainment and conspiracy to commit kidnapping." "What? This is ridiculous," she screeched, but her protests were cut off by the clink of handcuffs. I pulled my kids behind me as she was restrained, screaming about how the HOA was a governing body. "No," I spat. "You're a neighborhood watch group with delusions of power. And now? You're done." But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the time I returned home with my kids, the neighborhood had gone quiet, too quiet. Word had spread like wildfire. HOA board members were scrambling. Neighbors who once acted like self-appointed law enforcers suddenly couldn't make eye contact. But I wasn't here for their guilt. I was here for justice. Karen Wills, the smug president of this petty dictatorship, was already behind bars. But now I wanted more. I called Elliot. "Get ready," I told him. "We're not just suing them. We're pressing federal charges." I listed them out like a war plan: illegal detainment, wire fraud, conspiracy, racketeering. Elliot let out a low whistle. "You're going all in." "They took my kids," I said, my voice like steel. "They kidnapped them. I don't want fines, I want prison time." The very next morning, I filed a federal lawsuit against the Willow Creek HOA. It named every single board member who signed off on the removal of my children. I didn't stop there. With my federal access, I subpoenaed every internal document the HOA had: finances, emails, fines, all of it. What I uncovered was even more explosive than the kidnapping. The HOA had been defrauding the neighborhood for years: fake fees, embezzled funds, shell companies funneling cash to board members' private accounts. This wasn't just a corrupt board. This was organized crime hiding behind a picket fence. 2 days later, Elliot called, barely able to contain himself. "You're not gonna believe this," he laughed. "Karen's lawyer wants a plea deal. She'll admit to the kidnapping if we drop the fraud charges." I smiled. Cold. Ruthless. Absolutely not. 2 weeks later, the Willow Creek HOA was obliterated. Every board member indicted. Karen sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The HOA permanently disbanded. Every illegal fine refunded. Every victim paid restitution. And me? I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, watching Alex and Sophie play in the front yard. The HOA tried to destroy my family. Instead, they destroyed themselves. Freezing the HOA's accounts was the final nail in the coffin. Without funds, the board was legally and functionally powerless. They couldn't hire lawyers. Couldn't issue fines. Couldn't even keep the lights on. The Willow Creek HOA was officially bankrupt. And that's when the foreclosures began. Turns out, when you commit years of financial fraud, the government doesn't just slap your wrist, they come for everything. The IRS got involved. The county tax assessor launched an investigation. Every board member's personal finances were audited. And what they found was a symphony of corruption. Karen had been quietly paying herself a salary straight out of HOA dues. The vice president? He used community funds to finance his lakefront vacation home. And the treasurer had been laundering money through bogus maintenance contracts. It was a beautiful disaster unraveling in real time. Civil suits began piling up as neighbors, people who had been bullied, overcharged, or harassed, came out of the woodwork demanding justice. And one by one, the homes of the former board members went into foreclosure. That's when I made my final move. For years, they'd ruled this place like tyrants, extorting families and manipulating rules for their own gain. But now, they were exposed. They were vulnerable. And I wasn't going to just defeat them, I was going to erase them. I called Elliot. How many of them have lost their homes so far? He paused, then did a quick tally. At least 7, he said. Why? I smiled. Because I'm going to buy them. The plan was simple, I was going to own their legacy. Not just end the HOA, but wipe every last trace of it from the map. With Elliot's help, I quietly funneled my earnings into real estate acquisitions, snapping up each board member's foreclosed home as they went on the market. Within 6 months, I owned the majority of properties once held by the most powerful people in the HOA. And with that power came leverage. I called for a neighborhood-wide vote to permanently dissolve the Willow Creek HOA. The turnout was massive. The vote passed with 92% approval. The remaining 8%, mostly the same HOA loyalists who treated rulebooks like sacred scripture, were finally outnumbered. It was over. I watched the final board meeting with quiet satisfaction as the HOA was formally dissolved. I even paid out of pocket to have the Willow Creek HOA sign, the one that once stood at the neighborhood's front entrance like a warning, torn out of the ground and crushed into rubble. No more fines. No more threats. No more petty tyrants pretending to be judges. My neighborhood was finally free. And Karen? She wasn't smiling anymore. She had pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence, but she still got 8 years in federal prison. The rest of the board received similar fates: fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement. Every single one of them now carried a criminal record. No HOA. No power. No place left here. The next morning, I sat on my porch, a cup of coffee in hand, watching my kids play in the front yard. Sophie kicked a soccer ball to Alex, who laughed like none of this had ever happened. And in that moment, something in my chest finally relaxed. The storm had passed. We were safe. The HOA had tried to steal my children. They thought they could bend the law, flex their fake authority, and silence me. But they made one fatal mistake: they forgot who I was. I'm a federal judge. And I don't lose. But even though the HOA was dead, I wasn't done. Not yet. Winning in court, dismantling their network, buying their homes, that had been satisfying. But people like that? They're like cockroaches. The second they're out of prison, they try to scurry back into the system. Some new neighborhood. Some new HOA. And they start all over again. I wasn't going to let that happen. It was time to bury the Willow Creek HOA so deep no one would dare resurrect it. Step 1: Legislation. I had spent decades in the judicial system. I knew the truth: this wasn't an isolated incident. HOA abuse was rampant across the country. Families harassed. Homes seized. Lives ruined by unregulated neighborhood boards with unchecked authority. And now, I had undeniable proof. I contacted the senators and representatives I'd worked with on previous federal cases. I showed them everything: the kidnapping, the financial fraud, the surveillance, the extortion. I gave them emails, receipts, police reports, sworn statements. And it worked. Within a month, I was standing in front of a packed legislative committee, testifying before state lawmakers. I laid it all out: the danger of unchecked HOA power, the systemic corruption, and the trauma it inflicted on innocent families. I proposed sweeping reforms: mandatory audits, fine limitations, government oversight, and most importantly, criminal accountability for board members who abused their authority. And it passed. The HOA Accountability Act was signed into law. Across the state, HOAs were now subject to oversight. No more secret meetings. No more abusive fines. No more tyrants in khakis thinking they were kings. If they stepped out of line, they'd face real consequences. Just like Willow Creek did. But legislation was only the beginning. Step 2, Public Humiliation. Karen and her little empire hadn't just committed crimes, they had mocked, bullied, and ruined lives. And I wanted the world to see exactly who they were. So I leaked everything to the press. Every email, every bank record, every smug message about compliance enforcement. News outlets swarmed. Local HOA president jailed after illegally kidnapping children. Judge exposes multi-million-dollar HOA scam. State cracks down on HOA corruption after shocking abuse case. Karen's mugshot was everywhere. Her reputation shattered. The rest of the board weren't spared either. Their names became synonymous with suburban tyranny. No jobs. No reputations. No respect. They were pariahs. And I wasn't done. At the auctions for their seized assets, I made sure to personally purchase the old HOA clubhouse. And what did I do with it? I transformed it into a community center. No more board meetings. No more violation notices. Just a space for neighbors to come together without fear. We installed a swimming pool, added a basketball court, and opened it up for events, birthdays, even weekend barbecues. It became a symbol of our freedom, a place that once represented tyranny, now repurposed as a hub of joy. People loved it. As for Karen, the last time I saw her was in court during her sentencing. Tears streaked her face, her designer clothes replaced with an orange jumpsuit, wrists shackled. She sobbed, begging for leniency, claiming she had only wanted to protect the integrity of the neighborhood. I leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "You kidnapped my children," I said, my voice low and steady. "You stole from innocent families. You thought you were above the law. You deserve every second of this." She opened her mouth to speak, but the judge slammed the gavel. 10 years. No parole. It was over. Just like that, the Willow Creek HOA ceased to exist. No corrupt board. No predatory fines. No abuse of power. Just peace. I had turned their empire to dust. Now, every morning as I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching my kids play in the yard without fear, I smiled. Because I knew no HOA would ever dare cross me again. The Willow Creek HOA was dead. Its leaders were imprisoned. The stolen money was returned. Its former headquarters, now a thriving community center, echoed with the sound of children playing instead of backdoor meetings and whispered threats. We had reclaimed our neighborhood. But as I watched the sunrise over this HOA-free haven, I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't finished. Because what happened here wasn't isolated. The fraud. The intimidation. The abuse of power. It was happening everywhere. HOAs across the country were still bullying homeowners, extorting them, and hiding behind twisted contracts and legal loopholes. I had seen the worst of it. I had crushed it. But that wasn't enough. If I truly wanted to protect others from enduring what my family had suffered, I had to destroy the system entirely. Step 1: Set a legal precedent. My court case had already gutted the local system. Now, I wanted to take it national. With Elliot's help, we drafted amendments to the HOA Accountability Act that made one thing clear: any HOA engaging in illegal detainment, financial fraud, or abuse of authority would trigger automatic federal review. No more hiding behind state-specific clauses or obscure private bylaws. If they committed crimes, they'd face real, federal consequences. I worked with lawmakers, testified in more hearings, and helped close every loophole Karen and her ilk had exploited. It took months, but we did it. The revised laws passed, unanimously. HOAs across the country suddenly found themselves under strict legal oversight. The unchecked power they had wielded for decades. Gone. Step 2: cripple their finances. HOAs thrived on two things, fear and money. They maintained power by scaring homeowners into submission, and they funded that power through bogus fines and excessive fees. I wasn't going to let them keep either. So I created the Homeowners Defense Fund, a national legal organization providing free aid to victims of HOA abuse. We taught people their rights, helped them challenge fines, and overturned fraudulent restrictions. And when HOAs realized their endless revenue stream was drying up, that they were losing case after case in court, they started collapsing. One by one, abusive HOAs began to dissolve, unable to sustain themselves without their extortion racket. Best of all, homeowners were finally winning their neighborhoods back. Step 3. Expose the industry. This wasn't just about local boards run by nosy retirees. There was an entire industry behind it, massive property management firms profiting off abuse, lobbying against regulation, and pushing HOAs to squeeze every dime out of residents. I dug in. I partnered with investigative journalists, whistleblowers, even former board members. What we uncovered was staggering: kickbacks from construction companies, slush funds used to influence local elections, embezzlement on a national scale. For years, these corporations had operated in the shadows. Not anymore. The exposé hit hard. National headlines erupted. Inside the dark world of HOA corruption. Property management giants under federal investigation. Lawsuits followed. Government audits crippled their finances. Stock prices crashed. CEOs resigned. And within months, the biggest HOA puppeteers were gone, dismantled by their own greed. Step 4. Erase HOA power altogether. Their legal shields were gone. Their finances crippled. Their corporate sponsors in ruins. But I wanted more. I wanted to erase their existence. So I launched the Abolish HOAs initiative, a movement urging homeowners to reject mandatory HOA governance. It spread like wildfire. People who had been harassed, fined into bankruptcy, evicted over mailbox colors or grass height, they all joined the cause. Millions signed the petition. Entire neighborhoods voted to dissolve their HOAs. New laws were introduced, making HOA membership voluntary. No more forced compliance. No more automatic rulebooks. No more tyranny disguised as community management. Step 5. Make HOAs a national joke. The final blow wasn't legal or financial. It was cultural. See, for years, HOAs thrived because people feared them. Respected them. Treated them as legitimate authority. But once we exposed the rot, once we pulled back the curtain, they became punchlines. Late-night comedians roasted them mercilessly. Viral memes about absurd HOA rules flooded the internet. Documentaries about the fall of corrupt HOAs dominated streaming charts. It became social suicide to admit you had been an HOA president. They went from feared overlords to walking punchlines. And that was the real victory. Exactly 1 year after Karen Wilkes' sentencing, I got an email from one of the board members I had helped take down. It was short. Desperate. I've lost everything. I can't get a job. I can't even rent an apartment. Please. I need help. I stared at the screen for a long time. Remembering her smug smile. Her threats. Her belief that she was untouchable. Then I deleted the message without a second thought. She made her choices. Now, she could live with the consequences. As I leaned back on my porch, coffee in hand, my children laughing in the yard, I knew the truth: HOAs would never terrorize another family again. And if they tried, they'd have to deal with me. Because I wasn't just the man who destroyed the Willow Creek HOA. I was the man who destroyed them all.